Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining us at such late notice. But I think you will, if you've been with us over the last few days, appreciate the urgency of what's happened. I don't necessarily need to recount the events of the last couple of days. I think you can see from the tired faces around you quite what an ordeal and a kind of huge adrenaline rush at the same time this has all been. But we felt it extremely necessary to organize something in the wake of the events of April 16th and indeed in the run-up to that. I don't want to recount the whole story, but after two cancellations that, as you well know, the mayor attempted to then close down our event that we'd managed to put together with the help of a very, very, very courageous venue owner almost at the last minute. We were trying to quite remember when we turned up at the third venue at something like 4 p.m. The day before a massive 2-day conference was scheduled. But we thought it very necessary to organize something in response because this genuinely represents a democratic outrage and really brings home for us something that we've held as a foundational value at MCC Brussels for quite some time, which is the importance of freedom of speech. People often call freedom of speech the kind of first freedom or the foundational freedom, because unless we have the right to assemble and speak and debate and have our voices heard, all of the other freedoms are called into question. So what we wanted to do today was assemble quickly, hear a couple of reflections of what's happened, and then work towards a declaration that people of all political persuasions might be able to get behind. I'll read the declaration to you in a moment after we've heard from Frank and Bob, but then we want to have a conversation about it and about the events that have happened. So we don't pretend that what we've put on the chairs is necessarily the finished article just yet, but if you do feel that you could support it at this stage, or at least committing to seeing where it goes, once we close, we'll invite everybody over to the other side of the room where we'll ask people to sign it. But in the next day or two, we'd like to get your thoughts and reflections. If you want to email us, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to set up a conversation with one of us on the team, we'd be delighted to speak further, with the aim of then very quickly having a kind of final text and a finished document that we can publicize widely. And we'll certainly be asking for your help and support in putting the word out, getting your friends, family, business colleagues, political allies, even your political enemies to sign it and stand up, because I think we don't need to remind you, and the declaration kind of references this, that as soon as the authorities reserve to themselves the right to decide who gets to speak and who doesn't, it's not just national conservatives that might have their voices shut down, but as soon as that principle is established, it could come very quickly to anyone. To help us kind of kick off the conversation and hear a few reflections on what's happened, I'm really delighted to be joined both by Bob. This is I've been dreading the whole day. So a very, very long few days, and now I've got to correctly try and say Bob's surname. But so Bob De Brabandere. It's fine. It's fine. It's not my finest hour. But from now on, Bob. From now on, Bob. Exactly. Mr. Bob. Mr. Bob. No, there's Mr. Ben. There's no Mr. Ben. Anyway, Bob's a senator and a leading candidate for Vlaams Belang, Brussels, in the Brussels Parliament. He's been in touch, was in touch very quickly to offer his political and moral support as we kind of fought and battled against the forces that tried to close the conference down. So we're really delighted that Bob, at the last minute, has agreed to come and speak for us. And then, of course, we've got my boss, Frank Furedi, the executive director of MCC Brussels, who somehow was in the office even before me this morning after the events of everything that's gone on. So he continues to put us all to shame with his kind of commitment and effort. So they'll speak for maybe 10 minutes each or so, and then we'll have a conversation. I'll read out the declaration. We can discuss and debate it and kind of also have some reflections on what's been going on. But I will hand the microphone to Bob and over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm going to stand up to speak, if that's okay. I'm looking at the cameraman. Is this fine? I have to move a little bit. I'll do that. Well, dear friends of free speech, let me start by thanking the Maximus Corvinus Collegium for inviting me here today, but also for organizing the NatCon co-organizing the NatCon conference together with so many other organizations yesterday and the day before. I'm going to apologize. English is not my first language. I'm going to try to speak to you as good as possible today. In itself, organizing such a meeting as yesterday and the day before should not involve more than booking an event space, securing interesting speakers, and last but not least, food and drinks. Those are important too. These are all things that were taken care of quite well. The only thing that had not been taken into account is that this conference had to take place in the city of Brussels. Brussels, the city that is not only the capital of Flanders, but also the capital of Europe. Brussels, where this week it became clear that the right of freedom of expression is not as absolute as people tend to believe. I hope that the people of MCC will forgive me if I say here today that all in all, I think it's a good thing that what happened. I think it's good that it happened. Because Belgium and Brussels ridiculed themselves in front of the whole world press, for the whole world to see, to be honest. Because the reality is, of course, that quite a lot of people in Belgium, me included, we were not really all that surprised that this could happen. Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and this has become clear to everyone in recent days, is not all self-evident in this country. And the people here in Belgium, the people, they feel that. I will prove that to you. An opinion poll commissioned by the VRT, that's the National Public Service Broadcaster of the Flemish community of Belgium, which is the largest community, shows that 8 out of 10 people in Flanders think that democracy is good, or a very good way to govern a country. I think we can all agree with that. That's a good thing, they feel like that. However, it's the rest of the opinion poll that's more revealing of the current situation in this country. And I will go through this with you. Only half of the respondents believe that Belgium is currently managed in a truly democratic way, while more than a third say it's not. A majority of the respondents believe that politicians have no idea what's important to citizens, let alone they would manage to turn these issues into policy. And when asked how much confidence they have in politicians, governments, and parliaments in Belgium and in Europe, the average score is between 3 and 4 out of 10. I know there are professors here in the room, but I don't think you'll pass with that kind of score. To say that there is enormous dissatisfaction with politicians in general is kicking in an open door. The issues that keep people awake at night are ignored by the traditional parties. Even more, a kind of consensus has emerged between the ruling parties on almost all issues, so that in essence they are not far apart. About immigration, about globalization, gender issues, about the EU, you name them, they actually are not all that different from each other. There are differences between the traditional parties, but in essence they all play according to the same rules. But that's very simple because they actually invented those rules themselves. They exclude anyone who steps outside this consensus thinking. And it is now a simple fact that many of our citizens want to step outside of that consensus thinking. I don't want to anticipate the election results too much here, but all polls indicate that a political landslide is also coming in this country on the 9th of June. According to the latest polls, my party, Vlaams Belang, would get 27.4% of the votes in Flanders. That is not so far from what 3 traditional parties, and here I'm talking about the so-called Christian Democrats, the Liberal Party and the Socialists, that's not so far from what they actually get altogether combined. And if I interpret these results a little bit different from this poll, then it's even more different and it's even more clarifying for what's going on. Right-wing to center voters would get 60 to 70% of the votes. So 60 to 70% of the Flemish people would vote for a not explicitly left-wing party. And yet they have been receiving left-wing policies for many years. This democratic deficit is one of the reasons, probably one of the reasons why Belgium is the only Western European country classified as a defective democracy in the so-called democracy index. It seems clear to me that the events of last week have illustrated this to all of us quite clearly. A conference where the aim was to break the consensus amongst the other Belgian and the EU elite was thwarted by several majors. First by Philippe Clausen, the major of the Parti Socialiste, the French-speaking Socialist Party. His party is currently in power on the federal level, the Wallonian level, and the Brussels level. Then by Vincent de Wolf, the mayor of the French-speaking Liberal Party, the MR. His party is also in power on the federal level and the Wallonian level. And finally by Mayor Emir Kier. He is an ex-member of the Parti Socialiste, but as we have all noticed, he remains a socialist. From socialists to liberals, instead of upholding constitutional freedoms, those majors chose to not stand in the way of violent left-wing activists. They chose to threaten event hall owners, and actually they did everything that was possible to curtail the freedom of expression. And as I said in the beginning, the positive thing of all of this is that it's happened in front of the whole international press. There were concerned reactions from the Great Britain, from Italy, from Hungary, and so on. And only then, when all those reactions streamed in, our Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, he deemed it necessary to react. He responded himself quite late in the evening, actually, when the whole court case when in front of the Council of State was already underway. Too late, to be honest. But however, and it's important to emphasize that here, several of the mayors who actually tried to curtail the freedom of speech in Brussels, they are actually part of parties who are forming his government. And what's more, as soon as the Prime Minister of Belgium actually condemned what was happening, rightly condemned after pressure, actually he was contradicted immediately by his own government. And I brought something for you here. I will hold it up. Oh, you get a lot from anything too. That's a tweet by Zakai Katabi. You probably don't know her, but for those who don't know her, she's the current Federal Minister of Climate. And she made clear what she thought about free speech. When she was asked on Twitter, or X as we are supposed to call it, is the Prime Minister's response and the condemnation of the mayors supported by the entire government? And her answer is written here, Évidemment que non. You know what that means? Of course not. She said, of course not. You can't put it away.
Enough of her words.
4 years ago, this Mrs. Katabi, and this, probably you cannot imagine this Mrs. Katabi was a candidate to become a judge at the Constitutional Court in this country. You know, Belgium likes to point the finger at Poland and other countries in Europe, but I will tell you one thing. To get in the Constitutional Court of Belgium, you have to be voted in. So when there's a majority in government in general, you get voted into the Constitutional Court. Mrs. Katabi wrote history because she was the first one in history, as far as I remember, to not achieve this. So she was not voted in. You know, many years ago, I'm a member of the Senate. I had the chance to vote on her candidacy for the Constitutional Court. And, you know, back then it was an easy decision. And today I'm actually quite sure that I made the right decision then. She did not get in. But this woman is still a quite dangerous dictator, and she is still in a position of power now. She is in power as a minister of the federal government. And I brought another one here. I will give it to you later. This is about Philippe Clausen. You know, because everybody is talking about the mayor of St. Joost-de-Noode, Emir Kier, who sent the police to the Claridge Hall to stop the event from happening. But the first one who sabotaged the event was actually Philippe Clausen, the mayor of the city of Brussels. And I have printed a tweet from him as well. This one is, yes, in this direction. This is a tweet from him in which he looks back very proudly actually on an event, on a conference he was participating in last year. And one of the guests, you can't see it from here sitting, but one of the guests there was a certain Alireza Zakani. Now, you probably don't know who this man is, but I would gladly give you a helping hand. Mr. Zakani is the mayor of Tehran in Iran. And you know what his nickname is? The Butcher of Tehran. And you know how he got his nickname? Because of his crackdown on freedom of speech and women's rights in Iran. So the mayor of Brussels had no problem receiving this man in Brussels, not even a year ago, but the last 2 days he wanted to shut down NatCon because those are scary conservatives. I don't know what to say about Mr. Zakari, but is he an ultra-conservative? I don't know, but he's maybe somebody should explain to Mr. Closer that there is a difference here and that he's actually a hypocrite. What I want to prove in those two speeches to you is that anybody who thinks that the fight for free speech in this country is over is wrong. This will only be completely resolved when these types of opinion tyrants, dictators, are silenced, when they are removed from power, and when citizens no longer have to engage lawyers to have their fundamental rights respected. My party, we will take the lead in this. Today, as we speak, we will question the federal government. It's now going on about the shameful events here in Brussels. Tomorrow, my colleague Dominique Rotens, who is here in the hall, he will ask the Brussels government what has happened there. My colleague MEP Tom van den Driessen will write to the prosecutor about the course of events. And I can tell you this now, I'm currently assessing with our legal team, whether I, as a senator, but especially as a citizen and an inhabitant of Brussels and a guest of NatCon, if I do not have the possibility to take legal action. Free speech is too important to be left to those who oppose it. We have a duty to keep fighting for it as politicians, as academics, as entrepreneurs, but especially as citizens. And we can win. That was proven yesterday and the day before. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. You know, we live in a very funny world where it's impossible to meet anybody who is against freedom. You don't have people getting up on platforms saying, I hate freedom. You don't find very many people saying, oh, I really hate free speech. That doesn't really happen. Even the North Koreans love freedom. And in their constitution, they declare free speech is a very important value for us. So we have to be a little careful and understand what is really going on, because there seems to be a kind of a rhetorical reality. The word is very clear, everybody's for free speech. But when push comes to shove, a lot of politicians, a lot of governments seem to have forgotten what they signed up for. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that typically when people say they believe in free speech, when you listen carefully, what they are really saying is, I believe in free speech, but. And it's what comes after the but that is really important. Because the minute they use the word but, they basically qualify the term, I believe in free speech. What they really mean is, I believe in free speech, but not for people like you, not for people like them, not for people who are using hate speech, not for people who are using offensive speech, not for people who are a little bit too conservative, not for people who are really, are real believers in sovereignty, not for people who take this very hateful view that in the world we live in, there are only two biological sexes and there aren't a million genders. Those things I do not believe should be said. And I thought that was very, very interesting when I was negotiating with the head of the first venue where we got canceled from, a lovely guy, very nice person. I knew what was going to happen. Unlike my two other colleagues who are not as old as I am, they're very naive and they believe the best in people all the time. I knew straight away that when the guy said, I believe in free speech, but that we're not going to get that place. Yeah. Because what comes after the but is really what they really mean. and the rhetoric comes from before the buzz. And that's really what we're up against, because we live in a world where a lot of people morally assume that it's good enough to say, I believe in free speech. They don't have to bear the consequences then of negating it later on. And that's an important lesson, I think, that we need to really grasp and understand. You know, what I find very interesting is that our political opponents openly, publicly, casually declare their hatred for free speech. And they're using a language and they're using a word which barely masquerades that. So let me give you an example of this. This morning in Politicos, which is a fairly legitimate Main Street paper, has its good days and its bad days. Yeah. They have a headline today and it says, Europe's hard right. I like the word hard right. It sounds like something out of a good musical evening out, the hard right. Yeah. Right, I'll take it, sort of. Europe's hard right bags a big win after own goal by Brussels mayors. And it's the Belgian Liberal MEP, Guy I can never pronounce it, Verhofstadt, who I really dislike from the Brexit days, because
We dislike him longer.
yeah, because he used to go so hard time over Brexit in Britain. And he says, Guy, I don't know what he looks like, this kind of bon vivant, champagne, liberal, champagne socialist.
So,
What?
soft left.
Soft left, yes. Yeah. He actually uses the term ridiculous own goal. Now, pause on this, because a lot of you might think, well, that's good, an own goal is really, really good. But when he says it's a ridiculous own goal, what he really means is that the problem was not that we were shut down, the problem was not that we were cancelled, the problem was not that they tried to prevent us from finding our voice, the problem was that we overplayed our hand. That's what he's really getting at. The real problem was that we were too transparent. We were too obvious in our attempt to censor our political opponents. If we had been a little bit more subtle like Guy, who's much better at manipulating the way that things operate, maybe it wouldn't be so obvious. If we had found an easier and a better way, maybe if we had, for example, declared that there's a public health problem in the venue, that there were too many rats, or maybe there was some kind of a virus lurking in the background, and for health reasons we closed down. Maybe that would have been better, and there wouldn't have been an own goal. So basically, what I find really interesting and important to reflect on is he has got no problems. He has no problems whatsoever in shutting down his political opponents. That's cool, that's all right. All that he's worried about is that the electorate, the people, the citizens should not really see that. And that was, to me, the main and most important lesson of this, because it tells me that if you have a political establishment in Belgium and in many, many parts of Europe around here, then they're going to try it again and again and again. Now, as a Hungarian, I've got a particular interest in this. I have to admit that, it's my own personal, because I know that with the Hungarian presidency coming up, this was a trial run. This was the first attempt to try to sabotage the legitimacy and the authority of that presidency. If they can violate our freedom to speak out properly, if they get away with that now, then that emboldens them and makes them feel more confident about doing very similar things week after week, month after month, until we get to the end of the year. So for me, this was a very important event, a very important development, and I'm really delighted that, maybe I remember when I heard the news that the courts ruled in our favor, finally, I looked up in the sky and I said, maybe there is a God. Sort of maybe maybe I should attend religious services a little bit more often than I do. I think that that was a really important win from that point of view, but we have to remember that the fight is only just beginning, because I'm totally convinced that they're going to find different ways, different sneaky ways of trying to put a quarantine around people like us who are speaking out, who've got strong views that are challenging to their point of view. They are political cowards. I mean, they are really political cowards that instead of engaging with our argument, send in the police. You think that's the answer? The way you deal with arguments you don't like is you send in the police. And that is really out of the playbook of a 1930s tin pot dictatorship. That's how you deal with dissidents at every stage. You know, historically, and in more recent times, the way that freedom is suppressed in the West, the way they do it all the time, is through what I call, and this is not my idea, this is the idea of the first important political philosopher in the English world, but also in the European world, that's Thomas Hobbes. He's the father of liberalism. He's also an incredibly interesting thinker, and he basically argued that in exchange for providing people with security, people will be subservient to anything that the rulers ask them to do. So people give up their freedom in exchange for security. And that exchange, it's what we call a freedom-security exchange. It's something that you saw time and time again. You saw that during COVID, where basically said, as long as you protect us from COVID, you're not allowed to say anything, you're not allowed to make any criticism. We saw something that happening in California, but it really began in the most recent period, where every time a group of conservatives tried to have a meeting in a university, the administration says, we'll do a risk assessment, and if it's too risky, you cannot have the meeting. So the way they shut down meetings is by saying that it's not safe. It's safety as the main argument for taking away freedom. And I think that freedom-security exchange or trade-offs that we're seeing is what's really at work here. The minute you argue that freedom can be exchanged for security, what you're arguing is that freedom is a second-order principle. What you're saying is that security is so important, safety is so important, avoiding risk is so important, that freedom can be negotiated away. Now just think about it, just pause about it, because that is historically the argument that every dictatorship has used in the last 200 years. In the modern era, every single dictatorship has used this argument for justifying its authoritarian behavior. So that's one thing that we have to remember. The second thing you have to remember, and as a Hungarian, maybe I feel particularly angry about this, is that the rule of law is actually an important concept. We need to have the rule of law in any civilized society. We need to have a situation where the legal institutions are separate from the political institutions. But in any case, we need the law to protect us from a variety of different threats to our existence. Now, people in Brussels, the leadership of the European Union, continually criticizes Hungary and other Central European countries for violating the rule of law. Right? They give us little kind of lectures, It reminds me of the colonial days when the colonial masters said, oh, you little Hungarians, you're new to freedom, you don't really understand it. Why don't you abide by the rule of law? And even though in every respect Hungary possesses a rigorous system of legal norms and rule of law, we still get criticized for that. Now, if you want to see a violation of the rule of law, well, you saw that the last 3 or 4 days. Because basically, in Brussels, what the rule of law actually means is that the political establishment can make up the rules as it goes along. I mean, that's a fantastically important thing. They can make up the rules as they're going along, and they can always pull in a few judges into the whole mix altogether. We were just lucky that for some reason, the third judge, maybe he had a pang of conscience, maybe he was angry at his wife, maybe he felt frustrated. For some reason, he decided that actually the law should be upheld. We shouldn't be making it up as we're going along. So it seems to me that what we have in Brussels is a continuous violation of legal norms, not just of legal norms, but of a foundational value, which is that of freedom, and specifically, ultimately, an attempt to take away our rights as citizens. Because if we cannot open our voice, if we cannot be free to say what we believe in, we are no longer citizens. We are what in English we call subjects. A subject is not the same thing as a citizen. Subjects have got minimal legal rights to express themselves, to influence the way that the world works. So there's an important lesson in here. And for us at MCC Brussels, it's really quite important that we wage a campaign on this at all levels. We're going to wage an intellectual campaign that exposes the hypocrisy of the people that argue, I believe in freedom, but we're going to really expose those kinds of arguments. And secondly, we're going to fight a political battle, and that I leave to my local politician friends and parties, because they know the scene much better than we do, about ensuring that the basic norms of democratic decision-making and of freedom are actually observed. We cannot rely, and this is the important lesson for me, we cannot rely upon one judge who happens to decide in our favor. Because if the future of democracy, if the future of freedom depends on one single individual, then freedom is in trouble. Thank you.
Thanks. So we want to open it up to some questions and comments. But first, I wanted to read you what I said earlier is our kind of draft of the declaration. We'll invite questions and comments on this. You can pick things up in the Q&A and otherwise, but I do want to read it to you. So, the Brussels Free Speech Declaration. The events of April 16 were an anti-democratic outrage. After the last-minute cancellation of NatCon Brussels 2024 by 2 venues, following pressure from 2 separate mayors, a third venue faced down a public order notice and the attempt by the police to shut down the ongoing conference. Thankfully, legal action concluded at the last hour that the attempted closure of the venue Claridge was unconstitutional. The Brussels authorities tried to stop a peaceful democratic assembly and deny elected officials and a swathe of the European public their voice. They failed. But their attempts highlight the dire state of freedom in Brussels and beyond. The gleeful, casual attitude with which city officials boasted of denying the fundamental democratic rights of assembly, speech, and debate demonstrates that free speech is in big trouble. Worryingly, the court order of April 16 did not just invoke hypothetical safety concerns, but also directly cited the political opinions of those present as a reason for closing the conference. Invoking the spectre of the far right or of racism has become Brussels' favoured way to close down discussion. What is at stake is not simply a matter for those sympathetic to the views aired by national conservatives. When authorities declare the right to decide who can speak, freedom for everyone is under threat. That is why we need to launch a concerted campaign by all those who value democratic freedoms from all political persuasions to fight for the rights of assembly, democratic debate, and free speech. We, the undersigned, commit to waging such a battle. We commit to pursue a concerted campaign in defence of freedom of speech and assembly. We pledge to challenge city officials to uphold their democratic and constitutional responsibilities to let discussions happen and to ensure they provide the resources necessary for this. We pledge to develop and support a network of democracy-supporting venues that will not cave in to political pressure. And we pledge to support all those whose democratic rights are threatened by censorship, vague invocations of safety concerns, threats, and smear attacks from whatever political backgrounds. We will work to develop a range of campaign materials that will breathe new life into democratic debate in Brussels, the city which plays such a pivotal role in European political life. We invite all city officials, local, national and European representatives, those involved in policing and members of the wider public to join us. Freedom cannot be negotiated. We will stand up to ensure that freedom becomes a worldly reality for all Europeans. We'll take some questions and comments. If anyone wants to pick up things are missing, or indeed just wants to reflect on recent events. Yeah, we'll start with this gentleman.
Thank you very much. Daniel Demmer from Hungary today. This is primarily a question to Bob. I've read the English-speaking newspapers, Brussels and Belgian papers, before the event and during their assessment of the situation. And as a journalist, I could describe that reporting only as an utter disgrace. They've depicted the Antifa extremist attacks as freedom fighters, the mayors of Brussels as champions of free speech, and of course participants of the conference as sort of genocidal right-wing maniacs. How is this, what happened in the past few days, going to have electoral consequences when the citizens of Brussels and Belgium in general do not get the right information and they are presented by such an incredibly tendentious interpretation of what happened here? Do you still have open democratic sources of information to demonstrate the magnitude and seriousness of what just happened?
Thanks. We'll take a few questions and comments and start a discussion, then we'll get the panel, or rather my two speakers back in. Yeah, pass it to that lady and then we'll go to the back.
Hello, Tatiana Alchemy. I'm an anthropologist but also a journalist. I would like to thank you for what happened, because it happened in Brussels. And as you know, as you maybe don't know, the but here is institutionalized in what we call in French the cordon sanitaire. It is, the translation of it is the sanitary string which keeps outside the political and the mediatical and even professional sphere all the people who are assimilated to the true right. So, and so it is very, very important, because this concept is very has made a great impression in France, for instance, which is about to take very, very, very hard rules against freedom of speech. And in France, they are about to criminalize the meanings, the private meanings. So you will have a discussion in private, and they want to criminalize it. And for instance, they want to criminalize it for climate change issues. So it is very, I will write about that further in Belang, but I really want to thank you, because here you can challenge this problem and probably cut a fire that is about to go in other countries. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Can you just pass it? The lady behind that gentleman was just first. Great.
Thank you for putting on such a great conference and having this event today. Moving a little bit away from free speech as such, the owners of the venue, I believe, was a family, or is a family of, they happen to be Tunisian Muslims. And no doubt during the conference there were some important, but maybe for some people uncomfortable conversations about changes happening in Europe and immigration. And I'm curious, did that ever come up with the family when they bravely raised their hands to host the event, and how were those conversations navigated? And I'll end by saying I really commend that family for having far more moral courage and fortitude and business savvy CEOs of any number of very woke corporations in the United States.
Yeah, quite. Okay, there's that gentleman in front of you. Yeah, and then we'll get some comments.
Hello, my name is András László. I'm a candidate to the European Parliament, and unfortunately I wasn't able to attend the National Conservatism Conference, but I'm very glad that, first of all, you found a third venue, second of all, that you're doing this declaration right now. Just as a suggestion, I think freedom of speech is very important, but there's only one short reference here about why they are trying to limit freedom of speech. I think highlighting the content of what national conservatism is about and what is the speech they are trying to shut down. Not just generally, it was an assault on free speech, but what kind of speech, what kind of debates they are not willing to have is an important, could be an important addition to such a declaration. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Bob, do you want to have some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of interesting points were raised here. I will start with, the situation of the press here in Belgium. I quoted a number of poll numbers and poll results in the little speech I prepared. One I didn't quote was the trust that people still have in the mainstream press in Belgium. That's even less than in the parliamentary institutions. That's just the reality of it. They don't like to talk about that, but sometimes they are forced to publish these results. The people in general do not believe the press anymore. Why don't they believe the press anymore? Because they do live their everyday life, they see reality, and the press doesn't seem to report it. The way the mainstream press reported about what happened in NatCon was just evidence of that once again. Are there alternatives? Yes, there are some alternatives. There are some small, I must say, fringe, more conservative press outlets that are springing up, and they're doing a commendable job. And some of them are present here, and they do present an alternative to this mainstream press. But is this going to have a big effect on them? I don't think in the long run. But what did have a big effect on mainstream press and the influence they have in Belgium was social media. I am saying was, unfortunately, because my party, I'm going to give you an example of this, we are the biggest party in the polls. We are the least represented in all media in Belgium. We have 27% in the polls. We do not even get 7% of screen time on the national TV. This is in the Dutch-speaking part of the country in Flanders. In the French-speaking part, my party gets 0. When my colleague here from the Brussels Parliament is taking the floor in the Brussels Parliament, the French-speaking media, they turn off the camera, they walk out of the room, they wait until he's finished, they come back in, and they turn back the camera on. Like that, they make so that we do not exist. But because of social media, we managed to circumvent this whole issue, and we could go straight to the people with our message. Right now, that is also the reason why they're trying to stop social media from reaching the people. There's all kinds of laws against hate speech coming. Look at the fight that Elon Musk is facing right now with Twitter. There's laws coming on the European level, even at the Belgian level, of limiting the amount of publicity political parties can make on social media. So I do believe that that is the next issue we're going to have to tackle. I do not think, in Belgium at least, that we're going to change the mainstream media. We're not. We're going to have to create alternatives, which are there. There's Doorbraak, there's Politieke. They're small now, but I think they can grow. And on the other hand, we're going to have to put our trust in social media, and we're going to have to stop those laws, like basically shutting people's voices down, political parties' voices down. We're going to have to fight those laws so we can keep communicating there. I'm taking a long time here. I have 2 other questions.
Let's keep it going. I think it's worth saying as well on that a very important point on social media that, we've already at MCC Brussels got stuff in the pipeline on this. We recognise it's the next big battleground. They came for us physically, and they'll soon be coming for us virtually as well. But Frank, some thoughts?
Well, my main point is really about the position of free speech, is what you were talking about, not just in Belgium, but everywhere in Europe. Because I think we now live in a world where literally the moral authority of free speech has been called into question. if you go to a Western university in Europe and you talk to the academics, they openly admit that they think that free speech is outdated. And they openly admit is that there has got to be very, very real limits about how free you can speak. That is the norm. And I noticed this because, you know, when I talked about my negotiations with the guy in the first venue, and he used the expression freedom, I believe in free speech, but he also said something that everybody else who feels uncomfortable with free speech says. The expression they always use, and probably it's different in Flemish or in French, you always say, but there must be a line.
Yes.
There must be a line. Now this is an important point because historically, Democrats were in the business of expanding the area of free speech. Throughout the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century, people who believed in freedom wanted to have as much free speech as possible. That was really, to me, a very exciting historical moment. These days, if you look at the debates, the philosophical debates, the academic debates, they're all about, you know, sort of what are the lines that cannot be crossed. So they're not interested in expanding free speech. They're looking for limits to free speech. Or how much can we limit free speech? And they're passing laws. The laws we pass in Europe are not about, oh, we must have more free speech. Yes. It's always about more and more restrictions. And that is a really important reality because that's something that we kind of have to deal with. There was a very interesting statement that the head of the European Commission made, Ursula, where she basically said that she actually thought that fake news was the biggest problem facing the world. Now, what does she mean by that? What does she mean by fake news? Yeah, the minute you reflect on it, you know that fake news for Ursula is basically ideas that I put forward. So in her book, my views, my interpretation of the world, the way I see what's happening in Brussels is fake news. Right? And the minute you accept the idea that there is such a thing as fake news, I'm not saying that everybody tells the truth, people lie. The minute you accept the idea there's a fake news, then that's a prelude, the first step towards indicating that certain things need to be censored because they're fake. We need to make them illegal. So that goes to your cordon sanitaire. It's a quarantine you're imposing on society, and we in this campaign are trying to make sure that freedom can never be quarantined, that you can't have but that's what they're doing. The cordon sanitaire is not against conservatives or right-wing, but the cordon sanitaire is really about limiting freedom and keeping it under wraps, ghettoizing freedom. That's really what they're doing there.
Yeah, have we still got it paused, or did you go back to me? Yeah, I'll take my colleague Tony, because he was involved quite extensively in the negotiations with the owner, so he can answer the lady's question about what did he think he was doing. Then we'll come over to this side of the room as well.
Thanks very much. Haven't got too many profound things to say at this point, just recovering from a wonderful battle. The question you asked about the owner is very, very important, because Frank talked very importantly about this freedom-security trade-off that is often offered. And the reality is that the owner turned down security. He turned down security in favour of freedom. And we spent many, many hours together from 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon over the whole course of the weekend, and discuss things politically and philosophically, as well as the immediate situation and how to respond. He was under immense pressure. Umpteen phone calls from the mayor, constant interaction with the police. At every point when the police were being flexible, because they clearly recognised the ridiculousness of the situation, things then changed when the mayor clearly put his foot down and told them to enforce fully. At every step of the way, Mr. Ben, as we came to know him, because he allowed us to say that and use his first name, weighed things up. But he was never in a shadow of doubt about standing for freedom. He didn't express himself in the same way that perhaps this panel my colleagues rather, excuse me, have expressed themselves with the same language, and he may not share all, well, certainly I'm sure he doesn't share all the same ideas, but he was absolutely adamant about the fundamental importance of proper, thoughtful, rigorous discussion and debate. And if you want, there's a very good interview with Nigel Farage congratulating him, where he explains why he did what he did. But he constantly had to weigh everything up. And I think that's why I would just like myself, in terms of this, the declaration, very well drafted by my colleague, talks about pledges. And defence of free speech is a moral issue, fundamentally a moral issue. But it's also a fight. And it, therefore, political, but what we have not been very good at doing to date is fighting in a smart way and making the commitment to do that. And venues need the support. They need the community around them, they need people to fight with them, they need the knowledge, they need to know the law. The Court of State, which is the court that ruled in favour, actually has done this many, many times, ruled in favour of free speech. And venues don't know this. They're so easily intimidated, partly because of the culture, and partly because there's not enough brave people around like Mr. Ben. But they don't have the information. So I've finished that. I just think it's so important that the pledge includes us all committing to supporting people to stand up for free speech.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Can I see the hands again? Because I won't be able to remember this late hour. But okay, so there's a few people on the right-hand side, and Bill, sorry, as well. Just pass it to wherever you see first, Paul, who's got a hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to really stress the point that Frank was mentioning about that. Well, this is just the beginning, because in the run-up to the elections that are going to be happening in June, the attack that has already been sustained on what Frank referred to as fake news, disinformation. And if you remember, a month ago, Belang made a very big statement about disinformation was the biggest threat facing Europe, and Russian intervention, Chinese intervention, etc. I think this is a very, very important point to stress, because what they're really saying, and if you listen to what Belang was saying, he's saying that disinformation, i.e. information that doesn't come from them, is a cancer that spreads and has to be basically anesthetized. In other words, what they're really saying is that they look upon ordinary citizens as subjects of intervention, a health intervention, not as voters, not as people that have rights, etc. And this is really the contempt that these people have for democracy. And to realize that we really have got a huge battle on our hands here, and we've really got to go on the offensive.
Yeah, thanks. The other thing I think that highlights as well, while we get the microphone over to someone else, is just the degree to which the context, as you say, is a run-up to the election, and that they're scared, to this gentleman's point about should there be some more content in the statement. But they're running scared of the argument, right? They had to close this down because they know that what is coming is people are sick and tired and fed up with being told what to do by the Brussels elite, and that as a result the only thing they have left is to actually shut down discussion because they can no longer win the argument. But I'll take my colleague Benza, then my colleague Bill.
Marcus Benza again from MCC Brussels. So first of all, thank you for the event to my colleagues, because I think it's a very important one, and we are discussing a real issue and we are going somewhere. I wanted to emphasize as well, it was already mentioned, but I think we have to look at the legislation in the EP, ongoing legislation, because what they try to do is to put limits in the name of hate speech. And the question is also who will control what qualifies hate speech and what not. I think it's very important. And although we can agree that hate speech is not a good thing, the question of trust that you also mentioned, it's very important. Do we trust those institutions that European legislation wants to mandate censorship or not? Censorship or not? The other thing I wanted to mention is the question of individuals, because NatCon was obviously lucky because of two things. First, this was a big event and we had the media. But when it comes to a professor at university or to a politician, a minister, I know one, was invited, for example, in Brussels some years ago by professors of university. And other professors collected signatures with an explanation of, we believe in freedom of speech, but he was cancelled. So I think that we have to focus also on individuals who do not have the same power of media and being an established organization. And we have to reflect on the methods as well, and maybe this we could put some examples in the declaration as well, which methods will we use, because it's important. I think that the keys is that we have to shed light on what is happening, because if it happens in the dark, it can happen. If we put light on it, the soft left is afraid, more afraid. And the other thing is that we had a legal support as well.
Yeah.
So this is also a question of method. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Bill, and then just pass it to, we'll keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I'm Bill Brody, I'm a visiting professor to MCC Brussels. I think a lot of the talk this afternoon has been about free speech, which puts the emphasis on the speaker. But obviously there were a few colourful speakers at this conference over the last couple of days. But the corollary of free speech is our right to hear. And that affects all of us. It's not really just about free speech, the speech of the speaker. It's about our right as ordinary citizens to hear anything, and not for them to dictate what we can hear. And that appeals to all of us as ordinary people. And I think maybe we need to put a bit of more emphasis on that aspect of it. I also just wanted to pick up on the one point raised by the gentleman in the tie about should we raise some of the in the yellow tie, sorry, about some of the content, that it was national conservatives that were being censored. But, as one of my colleagues pointed to this morning, there are other people being censored right across the political spectrum. Some of them who I hold to be obnoxious, who support Hamas quite openly and publicly, for instance. But I want them to have the same freedom of expression in public places, so that we can hold them publicly to account, so that we can hear what they have to say and decide for ourselves. Because only by deciding for ourselves, we trust ordinary citizens. If our politicians, by suppressing free speech, do not wish us to hear, they are saying we don't want to hear. How can they be our representatives if they do not hear us?
Great, thanks. Did you want to speak? Yeah, Benny, please, and then we'll take the microphone. If my speakers don't mind, I'll keep this going, then I'll get you to reflect on the end. If that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick point. I was also part of the conference, and I'm also part of MCC Brussels, and thanks to the grace of the police on the first day of the event, as the cordon sanitaire came around the venue, I got left outside of the venue. And basically for myself, as a 25-year-old, it was important for me here in Brussels to talk to as many people as possible already from the training community. And during the event, I also tried to talk to people outside the venue who may have had a grudge about the event or had ill feelings about the event. And the biggest sadness or shock for me was really the drivenness, if such word exists, the drivenness of people outside the venue and the contempt they had for the venue and the lack of information they had on the venue. That was really shocking for me to see. And at the end of the first day, I saw the Antifa protests and I tried to interact with the people there. And what I truly felt was really a lack of willingness to engage in constructive discussion. And so for the pledge, what I also think is very crucial to emphasize, as MCC as a whole is devoted to the education of the next generation. And with regards to free speech, it is also essential to raise awareness on how the next generation should be trained to toughen up, be willing to disagree, and be willing to engage with others. Because what we see here in Brussels, not just on the adult political level, but also on the youth level, is that you are only accepted here in the Brussels conversation if you sign up to the European agenda. If you don't agree with it, then you're just a youngling already subscribed to the far right or the fascists. And being a 25-year-old in this regard, this is already quite saddening to see. So focusing on how we can train and educate the next generation in being able to engage freely in conversations, I think it's extremely important, and we should work a lot on that.
Great, thanks. Well, very well said. Anyone, can you just raise your hands up nice and tall, obviously? Okay, I can take maybe then a couple more of my colleagues. Great to have some other people in the room to speak as well, but I will take one of my colleagues.
Agnieszka Kolek, MCC Brussels, but also Passion for Freedom Art Festival, which is an international art festival founded in London in 2009. 2 points. One in relation to the declaration, but I think we should also include art and culture and artists, because this has been going on in the art sphere, contemporary art sphere, for years. And actually, I had so many different, let's say, adventures with art exhibitions in London and in Poland that I lose the count of all the dramatic situations. So just a few days ago, I reflected with John outside talking about this issue that we're just experiencing, that our exhibition in London was cancelled in 2013 when it was not called yet as cancelled culture. But at that time, the owner of the gallery used the excuse of security to actually blackmail us, take money, and run away to America with our money. We took her to court, we won, but we didn't see the money. But we just wanted to make the point. And then in 2015, when we had the exhibition, we had an email from the Metropolitan Police going to the gallery saying that they see one of the artworks as potentially inflammatory. They advise us not to show it, and if we want to show it, we need to pay them £6,500 for police protection per week. So as they are learning from each other how to shut us down, learn from our experience in London, and now going to Europe to see how they will try to shut us down there, what they are doing, because they learn from each other and do it in other places. The other point I wanted to make, it also creates a culture that we become marked as targets because we are controversial. So not only we shouldn't speak, we should be killed. That's what they say. They say, because that was after Charlie Hebdo, and these were the words when before we got attacked in Copenhagen in 2015 in February. Ina Shevchenko from Femen was saying, it's not only there is no freedom of speech in Europe, what they say is terrible, what happened, but you shouldn't say that, or you will get your pay. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think I've got one more person to speak, and then I'm going to invite the speakers to offer us some closing thoughts.
Thank you. I was just going to sort of bring up a couple of points about, first of all, I think we are witnessing history. This is really feels when you read what happens in the 60s and what happens with sort of the movements of time. This is really, we are at the precipice of something new. So April 16th, the way that it's remembered, I think is important. Secondly, I want to think and reflect and strongly second what Bill said. I think one of the temptations of people on the right is that we think that some of the things that we don't like, let's say, Hamas could be one, but in America, wokeism, woke doctrines, right? There are things we don't like. However, there's a temptation now in the United States, and we should be very on guard against it here in Europe as well, which is, okay, well, these things are unnatural, these things are wrong, these things are heinous, so therefore we need to also cancel them. This happened. It's happening already right now in the United States. There's a whole fight both on the Israeli side going on, but also with the woke. So I think it's important to think how we can protect all of that and really stand for principle. But that's not only a moral issue. And as Tony said, there is a political issue here, but the most important part is what the left did again in the 60s. They were able to think through the fact that they were minorities. We are a minority. When you're a minority, you need to double down on all the rights that you can take from the law. As soon as you do that, you can actually ride that to power in the future. So we have to make sure that we can defend against that we are a minority. And finally, the last point that I would make is, I think we should also be very careful about language. New terms that you hear, neologisms, so they're called, whether it's disinformation. These are terms that you hard rights. 5 years ago, it was not about the hard right, disinformation, fake news. These are new terms, And when new terms are invented by the establishment, they're always a signal that they want to shut down debate.
Yeah, well said on that point, thank you. I might slightly disagree that we're in the minority, because I think we'll see in upcoming elections, and we've seen in referendums that there's kind of a lot of people like us, but the general point is, I think, very right. Bob, can I ask you to offer some reflections to close, and then Frank?
Well, I won't keep it too long. There are a lot of interesting comments here. I want to rewind to the beginning, the cordon sanitaire. You know, my party, we have been subject to that for quite a long time, and we've been thinking, how do we get through this? The cordon sanitaire, where no political party wants to work with us. The cordon médiatique, where the media are so biased that they don't bring us. But, you know, what we learned through the years is that there's another cordon that we had to win first, is to break through the cordon populaire. So what I mean with that, we first have to get the hearts of the population. That we already managed. When people start to realize that, you know, oh, I'm not the only one who thinks like that. There's a difference. This is something a good friend of mine taught me. There's a difference between quite a lot of leftists and quite a lot of people on the right. A leftist who walks into a room always thinks, oh, everybody's agreeing with me. Somebody on the right quite too often walks into a room, and before he already enters, he's like, oh, everybody's going to disagree with me. And this mindset we have to change. We have to realize that we are not only on the right side, we are just also right. And when we have this mindset, I believe we can capture the heart of the people. Now, you went back to the 1960s, something that the left did quite well since then, and this is where they are still reaping the rewards of. They did, how to say it, a march through the institutions is something I would call it. The arts, the academics, the media nowadays, we actually would suppose, or we would call them leftists. That's not totally wrong. I believe we should do a counter-initiative here. We should reclaim the arts, as the lady there said. We should reclaim the academics. We should reclaim the media. This is not going to be an easy fight, but it's an important fight. And one more thing I want to add to that is the leftists say what you want from them, but they are quite coordinated. They support each other. When these leftist Antifa thugs try to shut down this meeting, do not believe that this mayor who then is using the threat of them to shut down the event. He knows that. They are friends. They are doing the same battle. Well, we should learn from that. We on the right, we are so vastly divided. We are divided over the war in Ukraine. We are divided over beliefs. We are divided over this. We are divided over that. The left is also divided. But, you know, when push comes to shove, they are not. And we should learn from that. The right should come together. And I believe together we can put like a counterweight to them. We can win this war. And, you know, that's be my final words to this.
I mean, that goes especially for you Flemish guys. I mean, it's a tragedy that you're so divided, you know, between the different orders of the right. That's from the outside, it looks like that to me. But 21 years ago, I was involved in a debate on the Today program of the BBC. It was me against Roger Scruton. And I have a left-wing background, you know, sort of, which is really where I come from. And Roger is an old-school conservative, or was an old-school conservative. And they asked us to debate the idea of tolerance. And the thing was, they imagined that because I'm from the left, I would be against tolerance. I would be against tolerance. And they imagined that Roger would be for tolerance. Anyway, so the debate turned out to be an agreement fest, because we both agreed against the BBC that tolerance is a very important ideal that we got to fight for. And afterwards, I met him a few times, and he told me something that I thought was very interesting. He said, Frank, you know, you probably don't realize, but you actually are a conservative. And, you know, sort of, and I kind of laughed at him. I said, what a schmuck, you know, how could he possibly say that? And then it turned out that he was actually right. And the thing that I learned from that conversation is that there are millions and millions and millions of people in Europe who don't know that they are conservative, who don't know what they really believe in, but their heart and their instinct is one that takes the nation seriously, patriotism, that takes the family seriously, that regards the tradition of where they come from as something that is really, really important to them. They haven't got a label for that, but that's what it is. And I think to that extent, we can be fairly optimistic that if we aggressively and confidently address the question of freedom and put it to the people, we might surprise ourselves about the reaction that we get. One of the points that Arta made, I think it was Arta or somebody else that made that was really quite important, is all the new words that come into being. And one of my criticisms of my conservative friends, even in Hungary, but elsewhere, is that because of our position, we uncritically accept the language that comes from the left. We don't even think about it. So there's a word that is now used all the time, but it wasn't used when I was a young man. When I was 24, 25, 26, 30, even 35, nobody ever used the term hate speech, right? It came out of the sky. One day I wake up in the morning, I say, hate speech. And I remember I roll over, I look at my wife, and this is true, and my wife says, what's wrong with hating? Right? I mean, right? I mean, because my wife and I hate a lot of things. I mean, we love a lot of things, but I'm sure that you guys as well. There are a lot of things you really hate. I mean, when you look around this world, that's a legitimate point of view. But the minute you turn hate into this political concept that you try to ghettoize and you try to criminalize, then what you've done is you give power to the people in the judiciary and in the political establishment to determine what is hate and what is it that you cannot hate. Right? So they begin by, if you look at the career of hate speech in the United States, it begins with just race. That's all it talks about. You cannot be a racist. You wake up next morning and you cannot hate gay people. And then the day after you cannot hate lesbians. And then you look around and you cannot hate people who are making fun of disabled people. And then the number of people you cannot hate expands and expands to the point at which censorship becomes almost routinized, becomes a routine. So what I'm really arguing is that when we go forward on this free speech business, we got to adopt our own language. Right? We are a minority, we all agree on that. And a minority cannot accept the vocabulary that is imposed upon us by our political enemies. We got to invent our own words that adequately capture the kind of ideals that we believe in, that all of us believe in, not just in this room, but anybody who believes in those basic foundational values that I mentioned beforehand. So for us, particularly for people like myself, who's not a politician, that is one of the big challenges of how we create a language through which we can give freedom a 21st century manifestation. If we can do that, and I'm convinced we can do that, we will win.
Right, thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to invite you to do is, if you feel able at this stage to add your signature to the declaration, I'd like us to do a little bit of symbolism ourselves. I'd like us all to walk over to the back of the room where we've got lots of copies printed on the table. And if you feel able at this point to add your signature, I'd invite you to sign it. So if we could all stand and go over to the back of the room, I do invite you to sign the declaration at this stage. If not, you can absolutely